Why don't we start by talking about how people using AI has changed the search experience and how it's changed how businesses are discovered online? I think generally what I've seen is that you used to go on to Google and you'd type a question or do a search and you get a page of blue links that would go to websites. And the game was to get your links up at the top of the list on the first page or at the top of the first page, and that's how you get traffic. But now we have people not going to Google at all, or if they go to Google, they get uh, a little AI result, and the blue links are farther down the page, and so it's changed the experience for users, and that's impacted how businesses get found. So,
Yeah,
what
certainly.
would you guys add to that? What are you guys seeing,
Well, would you like to go first?
Well, sure.
Josh?
I think the question actually needs to be a lot more nuanced than that. So when we talk about businesses, there's an enormous difference between a plumber and a high-end consultancy for a Fortune 500 company. And so those two searches are extraordinarily different. Someone looking for a plumber to unfix your toilet and block it, yeah, sure. Whatever comes up first, if they're available and AI is able to shortcut things, it makes an enormous difference. If you're looking for a high-end consultancy, well, then we've got a lot more psychology involved. And I think what we're really going to see now is an evolution in the way that people and the sophistication that people are actually entering search queries into these AI engines, as opposed to just what happened to the search links that we're all so used to. Congruently, and I don't want to take this too far down the other path, ChatGPT has just introduced their own pay-per-click advertising. And I think we're going to see a very rapid evolution, because these LLMs need to make money, and they're not, they're losing money, of paid advertising. And so it's going to, whatever we talk about today, I think is strongly going to change in the coming months, weeks and months.
Isaac, you want to add anything?
Yeah. And I think that's all. I think there's a lot of relevancy to the idea that certainly people, it's a more important decision, maybe who you buy your home from or who your attorney is versus who your plumber is. But I think, just as in Google, when you come up on page one, or if you're showing up in the results, right? So I think, and then, you're getting the visibility and you're getting the opportunity to get in front of the consumer, right? For the transaction. And so, right, you described the old model correctly. They would see a list of results, but I think there was more to that story, which was, and I think this is kind of what was being hinted at here a little bit by Josh, and that is that you've got people that are they're researching, they're scanning reviews, they're looking at the website, they're doing you had a chance to influence them a lot more. Now they're going to AI, to an assistant, and they're saying, well, who's the best XYZ near me, right? Like if you're in New York, if you're in Port Jefferson, New York, and you say, who's the best, water damage company? Well, you would get my client because of the way that we've made sure AI ensures that they show up. And so I think that, the synthesized answers, right? AI is only giving so many companies a shot to be considered. So even if you're like, let's say you make a more important decision, like, well, I want the best AI SEO company or something like the level of a more important consultant where I'm going to spend a few thousand a month on this company. Well, if you don't show up in maybe even the top 4 or 5, right? When AI is synthesizing the answers and doing the research for people, then maybe you don't get a chance to get that deeper dive. And so I would say that the challenge, it's real simple. First, companies aren't structured for machine understanding, right? So most websites are written for humans, but they're not organized for AI systems. So the company may have strong experience, they may have great proof, they may have case studies and service areas and expertise, but it's buried in vague website copy. AI needs clarity. That's why we always talk about code and schema. They want to know precisely, who do you serve? What do you do? Where do you do it? And why should you be trusted? And really, what proof exists outside your own website? Do you have reviews? Do you have citations? Do you have profiles, articles? Are there any what we call signals, entity signals? And most companies are not ready for that test. And so if they don't have those signals, they're just, that's that transition that's occurring. They're not going to show up because the website's no longer the front door. The customer journey's being compressed, and at a minimum, it's being compressed on that introduction side, right? I mean, it used to be if you showed up on page 1 of Google, there was a lot of room. You felt like you had a chance, and maybe someone might even you might have dreamt they'd go to page 2 a long time ago. We learned quickly over the last couple decades that wasn't the case. But nowadays in AI, I went and looked this morning, like if someone's searching for what we do, the AI only gave me the names of 3 companies, right? So it's a good thing I showed up as number 2. Otherwise, anyone searching AI may not find me. They may just go, well, these are the 3 experts in this consultative field. And then they deep dive those 3. And so, I think that's the issue, is that, it's being compressed. The journey's being compressed. Answers are being synthesized. And so visibility and the ability to be specifically meaningful to the query and address that. And of course, following up on it quickly when you have those signals, right? You got to, capture the client. Speed
And
to
what
lead.
Isaac said just there is, I think that's the critical issue. I put AI's, there's no doubt, it now shows up for 51.5% of all searches on Google. It's taken away 15% of Wikipedia's traffic. It is important. But where people are getting a bum steer at the moment is that they're not focusing on exactly what Isaac said, the fundamentals. What proof do you have that you are actually the best at what you do? What are you doing which is making you different? If AI is simply a computer, there's no science to it that's more sophisticated than that. It's a computer taking in the information that it has available to it to make a algorithmic decision on, if looking at all these options, what is the best. So the question isn't, how can I trick the system? The question is, how can I prove that we are the best at this? And that was why I said to start with, it's very different between a plumber and something that's more high-end, because I don't know about plumbing, but I'm reasonably certain that the way you fix a block toilet, is the same as the way I fix a block toilet. But what can I do to prove that we're good? And when I designed the first digital marketing course for universities, the university got very angry with me because what we designed was simply a marketing course. It had nothing to do with digital. And that's the very truth of it. Really good marketing is about the foundations primarily, and that will support exactly what Isaac's talking about in terms of reach.
So you're pointing at the importance of getting the fundamental marketing strategy right before you, and that's a precondition of getting found by people online. Yeah.
Well, if you're a computer and you need to make a deterministic evaluation of which is the best at this, forget about all the crazy stuff that's talked about in forums. How would you do it? Dave, how would you, if you were a computer, work out who the best, I don't know, name whatever it is you want, best CMO in the world is? How would you do it physically?
Well, it's what Isaac was talking about. I mean, I would look at reviews, I would look at testimonials, I would look at claims that the person's making, and I would, look to my friends and aggregate all that together and make a determination as to who I thought was best.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they do. They look for third parties that are reputable, that they can look and say, oh, this is a real review. They can look to see if you have a special technology that other people don't have. They look for the case study, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what all of that is? It's what you as a business owner should have been doing in the first place, regardless of AI.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's what most people used to do with Google. But now even the people who weren't good at it are just sometimes trusting AI, especially when it's something like plumbing and it's an emergency. It's like whoever shows up first, that must be the guy who's going to get here fast and fix my toilet. And if it's important, then it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 and there's the deep dive. But all of those things, all of the different components of their online visibility. And that probably takes us to another question you had, Dave, which is it changing or something? I think you were asking a little bit about that.
Yeah. What's the trend, and really how is it how are you seeing, or are you seeing any effects of this change on traffic of clients? I've heard one agency that said that they have a client that's had a 45% decrease in traffic as a result of AI adoption. So that's kind of the next question so we talked about sort of what's changed. And then the next question is, what's the impact of that change?
Yeah. Well, I would tell you, firstly that organic search is definitely, it's still a channel that I would bet on. And I think that it's just not the old version. So when we talk about change, traditional SEO is it's a narrow traffic game, we all know is gone, right? But organic visibility as authority, as the things that we're talking about here, trust, and having a demand capture system is is essential, right? The deeper assets behind organic search now become more valuable. In the old days, it was like maybe they landed on your site and it was really catchy and impressive and great. But now they have a research analyst over their shoulder going, is this company legit? And really, if the AI doesn't decide first that you should even consider the company, they may never even look at your site. The AI is going to look at your service pages, and that you have to have clear local landing pages, all of the entity clarity, technical infrastructure, all the other things, right, that are important, like, video, etc. Those aren't being depreciated, but I think that the new model really is about building authority and ensuring that you're machine readable, ensuring that you can appear in AI and search recommendations, and then recognizing that you have to capture that high intent demand and convert it quickly. So, my approach and what we would tell CEOs is don't abandon organic search. Just don't fund what we would, I think what Josh and I might both identify as what someone might call lazy SEO, right? If your SEO strategy is just, generic blog content, keyword volume, monthly reports full of rankings that no one ties to revenue, well then yeah, that asset's depreciating. But if your strategy makes your company number one in the obvious answer, right? Top one, top three, whatever, in your category, your city, your industry, if you're addressing the customer problem that you're trying to address, then your organic strategy, your online visibility platform, I would say is probably still one of the most important growth assets you own. So yes, SEO is changing. In no way is it dead. But really, I think the new question companies have to ask is our organic presence strong enough to train both humans and machines to trust us? I think that's where the money is moved.
Because you've got more people. So the bar, what I'm hearing you say is the bar is kind of higher to even get some visibility. And so the signals need to be stronger. And there's more people, there's AI on the other end, which is people that are creating content using AI. So there's more noise out there.
A lot of fluffy content.
A lot of sloppy content. So they're trying to sort out the signal from the noise. And so Josh, I hear what you're saying in terms of you got to get the fundamentals right, and most businesses don't even do that. But let's say they've got to that point and they do have the testimonials and the reasons, and they're clear about what's different and that sort of thing, which I know that's a big if. But you're certainly not saying that nothing else needs to change. I mean, right?
No, no, absolutely not. And you would be ignoring AI at your peril right now. I do not, by playing a devil's advocate, do not for 1 second think that I'm saying don't pay attention to this area. But what I am saying is that it's very easy to get swept up in the simple thinking. Oh, we just have to get found. Well, that was seen when Facebook was first a thing. All of these fly-by-night Facebook agencies rushed out and took everyone's money. And then that happened when SEO came out and was first a thing. I've lived through all of these booms. But the people who really win are the people who have laid the foundation. It's the old story about, would you build a house on a base of sand, or would you build one on a base of rock? Because once you build it on the base of rock, everything else you do, that's when reach actually matters. And you asked about how things...
Well said.
You asked about how things are changing. And it's enormous. Again, Ahrefs just did a research recently and found that the top-rated SEO companies have seen 35% drop in their click-through rate. So, of course, we're seeing enormous impacts across the board. But what will never go away is the way that people actually make their final determination. So I'm going to introduce a new idea, which I would love to get Isaac's thoughts on, of where the world is going. I want to, if it's okay, Isaac, I have a slightly different focus. So my specialty is in B2B and complex purchase decisions. So it's why it's very different to, again, I use the plumber example.
Sure.
I think where we're going to see people going with AI is asking for the questions they need to buy from these companies after they've found them. So for example, how many times have you been on a software website where they won't give you the price? And it drives you absolutely crazy because Gartner's extremely clear on this. People want to complete 57% of their purchase decision cycle before they're willing to speak to a salesperson.
100%, yeah. Yep.
But the website won't tell me the damn price. So how can I complete that 57% before I speak to it? And this is one of the roles that I think AI will play to help people determine who they're finally willing to speak to. What do you
100%.
think about that change?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, all of the work that we do in ranking clients with AI has to do with creating hundreds of assets, right? Which I think is what you're obviously emphasizing is the assets have to be there to educate and provide the information. That has to be there first. So if they find you and there's nothing behind the door, it's like, oh, well, these companies, there's nothing to it. So I think that what we're talking about firstly is the big shift is, and we talk about this drop in SEO and click-through on websites. The big shift is recognizing the current and the future is measuring presence, not traffic. So companies just need to ask, are we showing up in AI answers? Are we cited? Are we summarized correctly? Are competitors being recommended instead of us? And, as Sean rightly said, what questions do customers ask before they buy? Do we appear for those questions? Do AI tools understand our category, our location, our offer, our whatever, whatever our proof is, our testimonies? Do they understand them and do they believe them? Are they from reputable sources? That's all of what we do at Rockonometry. And then second, as Josh was just saying, and I'll double down on it, you have to create those answer-ready assets, right? And that's what Sean, I'm sure, is found. That's how you win. Is if customers ask AI a question, your business has to have that question already directly answered in a credible, structured way. And it can't just be fluffy content, real answers, real comparison pages, real pricing guidance, real problem solution pages, before and after case studies, test back to testimonies, right? Or whatever, reviews, frequently asked questions. And so AI systems tend to reward clarity, right? And really being specific and collaboration, right? So that interlinking of content around a brand and proof, right? That's what citations are, obviously, just as a simple, old school example. But bottom line, the website can't be the only place that says you're great. The reputation has to be distributed across a lot of different areas. And as Josh rightly said, thinking ahead of the ball and realizing, okay, how are my customers going to be asking about me? What are they going to want to know about me before we get on a phone call? And if I answer those properly, then odds are, and this is what I was saying earlier, even though I may be losing volume of kind of traffic clicks on my website, I'm now going to have a higher or a lower number of high intent clicks coming through AI that are high value. And so now the speed to lead and the follow through becomes even more important because I've done the work to win the day and get that valuable high intent buyer who's going to buy, but now I need to follow through and convert. Otherwise, I didn't actually prove that I deserve to be there at the top. Right? I didn't prove that I was that guy, and they're going to follow out and they're going to go back to AI and go, well, who else is on the list? Give me some other recommendations.
So you covered a lot of ground there. I want to unpack some of it. So the first thing you talked about is instead of measuring traffic, I measure presence. Well, I know how to, so I'm kind of taking the CMO's point of view here and saying, okay, so how do I measure presence? I know how to measure traffic. I know I can get a tool that tells me, I have website traffic reports. I get a tool that tells me what keywords I'm ranking for and how much traffic they're driving. Presence, AI presence, how do I measure that?
Yeah, good question. Well, you have to regularly test, and now we could talk about doing manually. It's not very easy. How ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever, all these Google, ChatGPT, all the whatever you like, whatever you're using, right? Google AI overviews, I guess, are automatic. If you're on Google, I get them whether I want to or not. And describe your category and determine, how are they describing you? And then ask buyer intent questions, not vanity questions, and see, are you surfacing? Now, if things are not surfacing well, that's where you have to correct it. Now, some of the SEO tools, there's a few of them, right? SEMrush and others have a limited amount of here's a little bit of what we think, but there are better tools, and we built one. I'm sure there's some other people that are looking at bringing those to market. We built a tool called Rockonometry over the last year that's literally specifically and deliberately designed to analyze all the questions customers are asking AI in the current real time about what it is you're bringing to market or your clients bringing to market, and then to track, analyze how you are ranking and where you're being cited, when, where, and how on all the different AI platforms. Well, we take everything. We've got the 6 majors that we API in there, from Grok to chat, and then through that process you would know, you're asking a very important question. There hasn't been a good way. The visibility layer into AI ranking is difficult because it's not about keywords. It's about hundreds of actual human questions and ways that people in different neighborhoods ask about different things. And obviously the level of that questioning, as Sean rightly points out, is much more complex if you're going to hire a consultant or someone really important versus somebody who's just going to come out and do like, lawn care. At that point, it's like they have great reviews. They showed up first. Sounds good. Let's give them a call.
Okay.
So if I can jump in there,
Yeah, go ahead.
we take a very different view of it. Not so much I'd like to give a more humanistic answer, which is where can you see yourself being mentioned by truly reputable sources? Where has a newspaper talked about you? Where has your local municipality mentioned you? Lawn care. Okay. What have you done? Did you run a charity fundraiser for the local dog walking place by mowing some lawns for free? Or did you give some kids a holiday money to do some stuff that got
All
you in the
those
local
signals are good.
paper?
Yeah. You got to have them all. You got to have, we social and everything, right? I don't mean to say you only back to the whole, you have to have all your signals distributed across, I would say around 20 different platforms, from citations to social and those testimonies and those real human stories and the real community connections. And you have to have backlink authority. I didn't emphasize that, but you really have to have hundreds of real high quality domain authority backlinks coming from those local institutions or whatever the trust sources are in your industry to validate that you have relationships that are bringing value and other people are talking about you on their domains and linking back to you. So I think that's a very good point, and it's 100% true. You have to. And it's more important now than it used to be.
So what I imagine is that there's a lot of marketing managers listening to this because, Dave, that's your audience. And the challenge that they're going to be faced with is, I hear this almost daily. We hate agencies. We hate working with them. Why? Because they constantly sell us the flux capacitor. I'm one of them. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've heard this over and over again. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be asking themselves, well, okay, but what can I do? And this is the mistake that I think a lot of marketing managers make. They think it's all an automated process where they can just pay someone and they'll do this stuff in the background. And we've seen this mistake over and over and over for 20 years. But what I was getting at was that if they're not willing to take the step with it, if they're not willing to do something that actually makes you noticed, actually gets reputable newspapers and your local whatever to write about you, well, you can't expect someone else to either. So your question was, how do I know where my footprint is? Well, you didn't use the word footprint, but I'm using the word footprint. Well, the simplest one is go into Google and see if those reputable people are writing about you. Not some crappy blog, not some weird girl's teacup Facebook, Instagram account, but real media that really matters in your area. If you look at that footprint and you find that you've got stuff that's recent that talks about you, you're doing a great job. If you're not, well, that's the first place that I would be thinking.
Good. Yeah, I think this is a great conversation because there's a couple of different perspectives here, both of which I think are valid. One is what do we need to do for machines? But fundamentally, what do we need to do for humans? And we need to be thinking about both those things.
Yeah. And I would emphasize, I haven't seen a different perspective yet from the start. I see Josh talking about, his focus areas, right? But I think those are part of the same picture I'm talking about.
I would
right?
say that I didn't mean different perspective, like conflicting perspective. But
no. I think
facets of the same jewel.
Thank you. You have to do these things. Like we emphasize with every client, if you're not willing to get involved in gathering those reviews and connecting your community and building relationships with trade partners, then it's not going to work. No matter how much content I publish and tell AI that you're amazing, AI, I can only do 49% of or 51% of it, right? The rest of it's like AI goes, okay, where are the signals? Is this a real company? Who are they helping? What's the real history? What's their domain authority? Things like that. Who's linking to them? Who vouches for them? So I love that's being talked about because it is extremely important. For me, it feels like, and I think this is what Josh emphasized, it's very old school, but it's overlooked a lot, right? It's the fundamentals. Like if you're going to be, especially a local business, you need to have connections.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do mentoring of small businesses, and I just got off a call this morning with a consignment store, and she was trying to figure out how to get more traffic. And so she's in a building with a chiropractor and acupuncture, and it's like, well, let's put some flyers on their desks. It's that it's reaching out and getting in front of somebody else's audience with your message. And it is that, in a sense, it's that simple, but a lot of people miss it. But yeah.
Socially, there's a really interesting change in human behavior right now, and it's impacting this greatly. It's one of the reasons we're moving towards so much automated content. And there is a lack of desire for people to pick up the phone and make human relations. And this has been documented in a million different ways. That's why we end up with so many keyboard warriors and
Business standpoint, not the consumer
well,
standpoint. Yeah, or both.
globally. And the younger they are, the worse they are.
Yeah,
I'll tell a quick story which is adjacent to this, but I think it's nice. In Australia, there's a thing called the National School Sex Survey. And they look at how sexualized children are between the ages of 8 and 18. And between the last they're done every 4 years, 3 censuses, what's really fascinating is that the amount of kids now that have sent a sexty message of themselves or to someone else has gone to nearly 100%. And we would expect that with technology being the way that it is. But here's the fascinating thing. The percentage of people actually doing anything sexual has fallen off a cliff. Why? Because hiding behind screens, we've lost the ability to reach out and have a conversation with someone and, dare I say it, be rejected. What a terrible thing. If I can amplify that into the business world, we're seeing the same thing with people unwilling to pick up the phone. And you said put a flyer on someone's desk, like invite them to a barbecue and ask for a business collaboration where, hey, why don't we, I don't know, throw something for the local community and get some media involved. So to come back to those fundamentals, I think that there is this big move towards, well, let's see what we can automate online. Let's see what content can be created automatically using AI, when the real opportunity is very humanistic. And it's the basis of all marketing. Speak to your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Local events are great.
Yeah. So how does this translate into action then? So, before we get into that, so you both touched on the importance of, it's not just visibility, it's what happens after, and how do you follow up, and how do you get people, once you get that visibility, then how do you convert that to a sale? So let's dive into that a little bit more. What are the things, if you kind of unpack that, what are the things people need to be doing in terms of, once you get some visibility, how do you move that buyer journey forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, as I said, firstly, the most important thing is just recognizing that traffic may go down, but lead quality should go up. That's ultimately what's going to happen here in the age of AI, is niching. And so, a lot of CEOs, are going to
seeing close rates go up, right?
Right, exactly. And so therefore this pipeline becomes more important, because the better question when we, if a CEO is concerned or panicking about clicks going down, is whether the remaining prospects are more qualified, are they more informed, and are they closer to buying? And so I think if we change the scoreboard from, the old scoreboard was more rankings, more traffic, more clicks. The new scoreboard, I think, should be about, more visibility and buyer questions, more accurate AI representation, more trust signals, right? And I think that's what Josh is emphasizing. Like, you can do that, you can do great content, but if you don't have real trust signals, real connections, etc., you're going to fall flat. So I think more high intent leads means you have to have faster response. And that should lead to higher conversion. You should expect higher conversion. These people hopefully are going to be a little better educated, because they've gone and looked and said, I want to make sure this fits my expectations or my pricing or my needs first, after they were recommended to you by AI or whatever. And ideally, you're going to have less revenue leakage, because you have a tighter follow through system. And people who focus on getting that business from AI, but not using AI to help them ensure that nothing's falling through the cracks after the fact, are going to quickly lose those people, because they're now expecting excellence, right? That whole experience has to be perfect. I could go into further detail, but I don't think there's anything else I could add to that follow-up experience, right? And the knowledge of what's needed for that. I really it's really just about doing the thing and building it out, and having a client who's willing to unpack the needs and the process, like Josh was saying, who's willing to get involved and get their hands dirty in the marketing discussion, and be involved in making that company great, especially if you're dealing with founder-led companies, which a lot of times, we are.
Josh, would you add anything to that?
So if I understood it correctly, Dave, your question was, once you've been found, what is it that helped people to take the next step? And the answer to that, I actually wrote a book on this. For anyone that wants to download it, you can get it for free from jmarketing.agency, or you can pay for it, buy it on Amazon Books. But psychologically, there are 9 things that our human brain looks for. And essentially, if we make it very simple, what they're looking for is risk reduction. So even though AI has told me, look, these are the 3 best, that doesn't win you, unless it's a toilet unclogging again, but that doesn't win you the client. What wins you the client is risk mitigation, that this is the correct choice for me and I'm not going to get burnt. And the higher that product is, the more expensive it is, or in B2B, the more chance it's going to cost you your job if you mess it up, the more you have to pay attention to this. And I won't bore you with it entirely, but just quickly for your listeners to run through the 9 things. I want to clearly be able to identify that the product performance will fully solve my problem and it won't create new problems for me. So if it's a software, for instance, yes, it might help me do accounting, but is it going to cost me 100 hours learning how to use the software? So we need to solve that and show that it's not that scary. Expertise. Are these guys genuinely the best at what they do? Product durability. Sure, will it work, but will it work for the long term? Pricing. And this mistake every company I advise makes. They don't show full pricing. So how can I make a determination of which one to go with? Production capacity. Can you deliver everything that I need at the volume I need? Timeliness. Can you deliver when I need it? Because I'm going to tell all the people in the logistics chain, so I need you to be able to deliver on it. Do you have similar clients? I couldn't care less if your client is McDonald's, because that's not me. They're not my client. So who's similar to me that you work with? Customer service. Will you actually help me with this? And return policy or guarantee. And if you were to summarize all of that down, it's, am I making the right choice or am I exposing myself to a lot of risk? That is what helps people to move forward after they have been found.
Okay, so your advice then would be around providing answers to all those questions immediately in a very digestible way.
What we've shown over the last 15 years is that when you answer all 9 of those questions in one place without needing to click around, the chance of someone inquiring increases between 40 to 60%. If you ask questions about that person so that you can give them advice specific to them, and this is what's relevant to AI, then the chance of them inquiring increases to 84%. So what is really good marketing for AI? Well, it is feeding it all of those bits of information so that it can help. And I think if I jump forward into the future, what we're going to start seeing is AI embedded into websites. And we're going to start to land on websites and ask a lot of these questions. What we think we're going to see from AI in the future, and this is jumping forward probably 3, 4, 5 years, we think we're going to see AI embedded into people's websites so that you go in and you actually ask these questions directly. And so we're already starting to prepare for this future where they are internal. We kind of have them already with chatbots, but I think that there's a whole new future that no one's even considered yet, because this is what we know the human brain needs to make decisions.
Yeah, I'm saying chatbots. I mean, chatbots are sort of evolving from answering a few simple almost predetermined questions to being able to take more deep questions and then also learn from the answers and take them, take it much deeper and much farther, have a much more robust conversation with the website visitor than what they've done in the past. And then at some point, I've seen some that it gets to the point where it's like, well, I don't have the answer to that. I can connect you with someone, which is the natural next step. If they, once they've sort of plumbed or mined whatever the AI is able to serve up.
That's right. And if you're an LLM, if you're Google AI, if you're ChatGPT, it doesn't matter. Your end game has to be the same as Google's has been for the last 20 years. It has to be, I am providing the best answer to this search query now. Because if you provide something which turns out to be a bad experience, well, humans are exceptionally good at spotting patterns. And so when we no longer trust the LLM, we stop using it. Mm. If you look at the history of Google SEO, first of all, you could rank really highly on Google because you just made articles that used the keyword you were trying to rank for 100 times in the article. Google got smart to that because the wrong websites were getting up the top. So what did they do? They moved towards links. Awesome. Everyone just started making crappy articles on crappy article websites. And that would push them up to the top of Google when they weren't actually the best answer. And so My point is that we're going to see these LLMs develop and change, and the future is yet unknown. But to come back and really get that horse one more time, what will never change is the fundamentals that humans are looking for when they make these decisions. And the better that we can work on those foundations and present them, the more we're feeding the LLMs what they need to make a really honest and valuable decision for us.
That's a good insight. We really have decision helpers, and that's a great way to look at it. So, what would you, to sort of narrow this down, if you're talking to a marketing manager, a CEO, a CMO, what would you recommend they be doing over the next 6 to 12 months?
I would say that a CMO should be asking questions like, are we measuring discovery where it actually happens now, or only where we used to be able to track it? I think that'd be the first question. And that's, so the AI discovery pool is growing. I think number two, I think that my advice to the CMO would be to say, do we know what the buyer intent questions that matter most are before someone chooses our client? And then are we building content around keywords or around decision moments? Because there's a difference between the way people used to build and the extreme where it started, like Josh said, keyword stuffing, versus decision moments, which are the real facts, the real data that consumers want, right? The transparent, and again, ideally in the proper code and schema that AI is able to digest and understand it. And then I think probably if I was to come up with a couple more CMO questions other than that, I would say, and I think, Sean makes this point, I would say, are we creating original proof, right? Or are we just repeating category language everyone else uses? Because that's not going to help you in the end. AI is going to see through that. And I think that last topic you were on, I think I would say from a CMO perspective, the question is, are we still reporting rankings without connecting them to pipeline, calls, bookings, and revenue? We make an effort everywhere we can to, when we're responsible for revenue for a client. I know, Sean probably does the same thing. A lot of agencies do, to put in place that whisper phone call number in the middle, where we can track the calls that we generate and record them, and then tie that out to like paid invoices in QuickBooks for our high value clients. So we know real revenue attribution all the way through the process, right? Oh, this came through a ChatGPT citation and it ended up being worth X this quarter. So I think, those are the types of, for me, I'm always thinking in the trenches, right, as a builder when I'm helping these clients grow. And those are the types of questions I would ask them, right, if I was a CMO and serving in a fractional CMO role.
Perfect. Great. Josh, what's your perspective on that?
All CMOs have the same problem. They have a finite budget. They don't know. John Wanamaker said 50% of my budget is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. Every single one of them, even in a digital age, faces that. And in fact, with this move towards AI and Google and all the rest of it's becoming more and more of a black box of mystery. So every CMO should be looking at, where are people dropping out of the funnel that I already have?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we know that any given person that you speak to has a 4% chance of being in the purchase cycle right now, which means 96% of people aren't. Come on, don't drop out. 4% of people are in the purchase cycle at any given time. Now, if I'm a CMO with a finite budget, there's two things that I can do. I can go and try to reach out to more people, knowing that 96% of what I spend my money on is going to people that are not ready to purchase and are not going to purchase. Or I can focus my attention on the 4% that are, and I can question why they didn't. Now, if I'm a CMO, that's where I put all of my attention first. Because once I've done that, and I can demonstrate that, hey, I took these problems that they had away and I solved them, well, now everything that I do in terms of reach, whether it's investing in AI results, whether it's Google paid search, it doesn't matter if it's putting flyers in people's letterboxes. Every further spend is going to be exponentially more effective. And if I'm a CMO, that ticks all of the boxes for me.
There's another aspect of AI, which is sort of the reverse. We've been talking about sort of AI for inbound inquiries, but I've been playing around with AI as finding signals for buyers for outreach. So it's sort of the opposite. It's really good at that sort of research and identifying signals and ranking prospects and things like that, so that I can find the people that are in that 4% buying window. I want to be in front of them, not the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, ideally. It's nice when you can get some intent signals.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, but it's,
Yeah. But AI is a good little assistant for that too.
yeah.
Just there,
So
I
Josh,
think you've
let me
opened up a really interesting Pandora's box there, which I won't go too deep into as well. But I've worked with a lot of agencies recently that try to make these synthetic personalities and all the rest using AI. And
Yeah.
the problem with that and also buying intent is, do I know what the algorithm is that it's actually using? What the source material is? So we're working with the biggest exhibition business in South Africa right now. We've completely rebuilt the way that they do everything. But congruent with that, they've been working on an AI platform to capture all of the internal conversations that every one of their sales team has into one black box, which then can spit out marketing insights and sales insights and all the rest of it. And you know what they've found so far is that they've got such a jumble of data that what's being spat out, even though in principle sounded fantastic, is not actually useful. And so I think it's a totally different topic that we should have another day. But blind trust is a really dangerous thing, and in fact, it's the entire theory of thesis behind Idiocracy, the movie.
which is a great movie. I love that. Well, let me come back to
Yeah,
that.
I'll just say, Dave, briefly, because I think you were making a good point about, and I'll tell you, when I think about buyer intent signals, I think about, did they visit, do I have evidence they visited my website? Did they visit my competitor? Did they look up my competitor? Were they researching the subject matter? Those types of things, right? Maybe they ended up in a forum or a Facebook community. So those are all signals that, for me, because Dave rightly puts it, if only 1 out of 25 people that I'm possibly marketing to actually wants to talk with me right now, and it's expensive to reach my ideal client profile, for instance, to have the high value conversations, then I have to think real carefully, like, how much, do I want to throw mud against the wall, or do I just want to talk to the people who have given me enough signals to say, yes, I'm interested? And ideally, that's the people who then show up in your pipeline. And yes, that's the first place we have to be a student, is, are we losing the people we got to begin with? Because if so, we don't need any more. We better fix it first.
That was your question about why they didn't, Josh. I want to unpack one other thing you said, Josh, which is, so buyers go through journeys. What I took away, and I may have oversimplified what you were saying. I probably was, but when you talked about the increase, if you present all the answers to the 9 questions up front, that increases conversion rates. Are there actually different phases to a complex decision where it doesn't just happen instantly on one web page visit? Is there a time dimension to this? Do we answer different questions at different times? So unpack that a little bit more.
So this is where it comes back to where I started, which is, it depends on who the client is we're talking about. If it's a relatively low risk question or search,
let's talk about
then
B2B.
they're going to do it straight away.
Yeah.
But in B2B, there's usually between 5 to 7 different people in the purchase cycle. The first person that searches is often not a decision maker at all. It's a secretary or someone who's been charged with that. And for that person, they just need to tick a certain series of these boxes in order to say, well, now this is shortlisted and worth presenting to my boss. We had a really interesting case study recently with a website we made for a medical software business out of Finland. And what we found, they were trying to penetrate the UK market. What we found was that there were 4 distinct buying groups involved. There was the doctors who wanted this software because it sped things up. There was the administration people of the hospital because they could do things faster with it. There was the hospital board themselves who ultimately signed off on it. Sorry, 5, I've left one out. There were the tech people in the hospital, and there was the NHS who would hopefully eventually fund it. Well, all 5 of those groups have different fundamental questions. So you're right in questioning it. They won't make the decision instantly. But what they will do is pass it to the next group up. And so really effective marketing is understanding what the questions are for all 5 of those groups and being able to provide them in one place for that group solely. I don't want to go through the technical specifications that the tech guy goes through to work out whether this is relevant to me or not. Mm-hmm. So yes, they will. They will take it to the next step today, but what's the next step in the process?
Gotcha. So it's almost like you wouldn't label it this, but it's conceptually a landing page for the admin, a landing page for the tech guy, a landing page for the HR person, a landing page for the funder that answers all their questions in one place. So you've sort of teased it out to the different audiences, and you've put all the information that each one of those audiences needs in a highly accessible fashion. I like.
Exactly. And now let's tie that back to the topic that we're talking about, which is AI. Why is that a smart thing for AI? Well,
Yes.
AI is highly personalized. It knows that you're the tech guy. And so it's going to go crawling through each of those pages, find the one that's relevant to you, and answer the questions which it knows you need answered. So this is why I'm always playing the devil's advocate, is that until you have those foundations, AI can't do what AI is really good at doing.
And once you have those foundations, AI does its thing, and you don't have to worry so much about it. It's kind of yeah.
Well, that's when Isaac has an area of expertise that I don't have, which is about then focusing on the reach side of things. How do you do it at scale really, really quickly? And I wouldn't begin to know the stuff that he knows, but I know how to make sure that when it gets handed over to him, it's going to be extraordinarily effective.